What is up, everybody? Welcome to another Good Vibes gaming discussion. I'm back. 2 in a row. Somehow my topic won twice in a row. I believe that is the first time that this has ever happened in the history of GVG. If you've been watching our weekly discussion since the beginning, you know that I am not very popular in the polls. This is unprecedented. We're in new, uncharted territory here.
Well, you know why that is. You're letting the hate flow through you, because I noticed the theme for the last two suggestions here is, honestly, I forget the last one because my mind is just gone. It's all full with.
No, it was the worst Nintendo games.
The worst Nintendo games, and now we're just talking about.
Yeah.
Well, what are we talking about, Steve? You're the host.
You're right, though. I'm introducing just the tiniest amount of bad vibes into GVG by having us channel our darkness, if you will. So this is our least favorite games in our favorite franchises. And if you haven't figured it out by now, whether you're listening or watching on youtube.com, I'm joined, as always, by my good friends and GVG co-founders Ash Paulson and Derek Bittner. And we've got some interesting things to discuss. Before we do that, though, I do want to point out, if you're watching live on YouTube, you might notice these sick threads I'm wearing. Down below in the YouTube store, we now have the Super Family line of shirts, and for a first on GVG, hoodies. So feel free to check those out. We would be so happy if you picked one up. They're really cozy. I promise. They're really, really comfortable.
Yeah.
But
Steve, I just want you to know the best doggos in gaming had to die so that the worst games in our favorite series could live. I just want you to know that.
Listen.
Now, it is important to note, though, that when I post these polls on Patreon, when I post these polls on Patreon, I don't let people know whose topic is, which topic is whose. So the fact that you went so long without having one of your topics chosen has nothing to do with you, my good friend.
Yeah, it's it's Steve. Screw Steve.
Yeah,
it
has nothing
absolutely.
to do with you, man.
I know y'all love me. I know it.
Of course.
But
of course.
Obviously, if people love just a little bit of negativity to go with those good vibes,
right?
It seems like there's just a little bit of spice that people are craving. So we're here to give it to you today. As I mentioned, we're talking about our least favorite games in our favorite franchises. And just like before, I'm going to go in the order that were displayed on the screen. Quick reminder before I introduce who's going first. If you want to vote on the topic of these discussions, you can head over to patreon.com/gvgaming, where at the producer tier and above, you actually do get input, like Ash mentioned, on what it is we discuss each and every week. This week, we voted on this topic, or our patrons voted on this topic, and you could be part of that group too. Patreon.com/gvgaming to find out more. With that said, we're going to start with Ash on the very left of your screen here. What is your least favorite game in your favorite franchise?
All right. So, I'm going to have to come into this discussion talking about Mega Man, and I think you guys already know where this is going. You can even see it, those of you in our live audience can see it in the video description, the game I chose, and what I posted there, put in the description here. But I'm taking Mega Man as a whole here. I'm not separating by Classic X0. We're just taking Mega Man as a whole. And come on, it's Mega Man X7. This game is hot garbage, and it needs to be burned to the ground, which is something, as you'll know, the boss Flame Hyenard in this game says over and over and over again during his boss fight, because the game's audio mixing is trash, or at least it was in that fight. This game is terrible, you guys. So X6 was bad, but they somehow made X7 even worse. And this was the franchise's turn to 3D. This was Capcom's attempt to take Mega Man X into the third dimension, which they should never have done. And it doesn't work. The movement is sluggish. The visuals are muddy and bland. The character models don't look great. Not that this has anything to do with it going 3D, but the voice acting is atrocious, at least in English. Absolutely atrocious. The story is kind of dumb. It also introduced a new character in Axel, who would actually go on to become a better character in later games. But in his debut, he's insufferably annoying, and just the game, it's just not fun to play. The game is just it's just a bummer. The level designs are completely forgettable. The controls, just, you could see what they were going for, taking the mechanics of Mega Man X and putting them into a three-dimensional context, but it just doesn't work. It is such an unfun mess of a game to play. And what more can you say?
I've got to ask the question, because I don't think I've played X7, so I'm a little out of my depth on that one. But I have played many Mega Man games and most of the X series. And for me, my personal like low point in the X series specifically is Command Mission. Is this really worse than that?
Oh, dude, it's not even close. So Command Mission to me, I of course I play Command Mission, obviously, diehard Mega Man fan here. That to me is the definition of like a 6 out of 10 or a 5 out of 10 game. Like, it's just average across the board to me. I don't think it's particularly bad. I don't think it's particularly good. It's just completely forgettable to me. But X7 is aggressively terrible.
I gotta toss out other games to try to compare these to get your thoughts on those, just so we have an idea of where you're coming from here. Because we have other, at least weird spin-offs for Mega Man, like, and I've never played them, but we got Mega Man Soccer, Mega Man Battle and Chase. You don't hear anybody talk about those, but they don't really get brought up a whole lot, and are probably generally considered not great. So.
But I think that's the point, is that they're not great. Like Battle and Chase, okay, yeah, whatever, it's fine, not great. Mega Man Soccer, yeah, it's not great, but I don't consider either of those as aggressively, offensively terrible as X7. And part of that is due to the fact that, to be fair, Battle and Chase and Soccer are spin-off games. It hurts more when a mainline game, the next big sequel in a mainline series, is so bad, right? So I feel like it stings more when it's like a mainline game. And remember, this is also coming hot off the heels of X6, which itself was a bad game. It just was, but it was still had that, the great 2D controls and to an extent gameplay the series is known for, but it was just flanked by trash level design and other really strange design decisions that didn't work out at all. But, to go from bad in X6 to absolutely abysmal in X7, that was a tough time to be a Mega Man X fan. And fortunately, they would kind of rescue the series with X8, which is actually a pretty good game. But, excuse me, X7 is not only the worst or my least favorite game and the worst game in the Mega Man series to me. I think it's one of the worst games I have ever played, period. Wow. It's one of the worst games Capcom has ever made. It is one of the worst games I've ever played. And, there are some other stinkers in the franchise, too. Battle Network 4, Mega Man 2 for Game Boy. Those are bad, but X7 just takes the cake. And after we're done, Steve, I'm going to send you a video of the boss fight I'm talking about, because you have to hear it.
There's no way Steve hasn't seen the Flame Hineyard fight. Like, I've never played it, and I know that fight.
Well, that's what I thought. But so you have seen it, Steve? Yes. Okay, so you know what I'm talking about. Yeah, yes. And how does something like that make it through QA? How did that happen?
You're assuming there was QA.
Exactly, right? But even if you can get past all the the disappointing presentation, it's just such an unfun game to play. It's a game that goes out of its way to make you feel bad while you're playing it. It's like, I'd rather be doing just about anything else other than like putting a fork in my eye.
I mean, it has to hurt for you, especially because you don't have X until what, 2/3 of the way through the game?
That's the other thing too. Is
really?
One of the dumbest things about this game, and I appreciate what they were going for here. They were trying to narratively make, X the pacifist he always says he is. And by this time, he's battle weary. He wants to find peaceful solutions. So you start the game without the main protagonist being playable. You can only play as Zero and Axel when you start the game. The guy whose name is on the box, is in the title, isn't playable until you rescue half of the Reploids in the game, or you just get to the final areas of the game. Once you beat the 8 Mavericks, then X becomes playable, but he becomes playable before that if you rescue half of the Reploids, and which itself is just such an unfun thing to have to do in that game too. But and then, I mean, it's worth it. X is easily the best character in the game from a game, like, he's super overpowered. He's basically Axel, but way better. And Zero just sucks in this game completely. Like, if you think playing as Zero is cool and fun, play X7. It will make you hate playing as Zero, unfortunately. And what game makes playing as Zero not fun? He's Zero. He's awesome. So yeah, they did Axel bad. They did Zero badly. And then you can't even play as X until later on in the game. And yeah, this game, like I said, I appreciate what they were going for narratively with X, but I think they needed to do it in a different way. Plus his English voice actor in this game, you guys, my God, I shit you not, Steve. One of the voice clips when X loses a charge shot, he goes, "Stop it!" I'm not even kidding you. I'm not even kidding you. So, yeah, stop it. And it's so whiny. No. This game did everything I love about this series dirty. X himself, especially. And I would rather do just about anything else than play Mega Man X7. It's truly awful.
Oh, wow. That is rough coming from you of all people. Who would think that a Mega Man game would be among your least favorite games of all time? Like, that to me is kind of the shocker here.
I mean, maybe it's because I'm so critical of Mega Man, because I'm such a big fan that the stinkers hurt that much more. But like I said, even the other games in the series that are among the worst, like Battle Network 4, Mega Man 2 for Game Boy, I can tolerate those. They're bad, and I can see them as bad, but whatever, I can tolerate it. But X7 is just so aggressively terrible, and you just have to wonder what they were thinking while making this game and how anyone thought the product they were putting out was going to be fun, not only for Mega Man X fans, but just for game enthusiasts or players in general. I don't know what went wrong with this game. So much did. And it's a damn shame, but they did, like I said, they rescued the series with X8, but unfortunately now that was many, many, many years ago. We still haven't gotten X9. I still dream of a Sonic Mania style 2D, Mega Man X9 with juiced up animation like you would see in like SNES style animation that you would see in Sonic Mania. So we'll see what happens, but yeah, X7 is a stain on the series for sure.
Before we move on, I have to ask you this just because you're the biggest Mega Man fan I know, and I know it's not going to sway your opinion, but where do you stand on Mega Man Cross Street Fighter?
It's forgettable. I didn't really like it. But I appreciated the effort. I mean, I think it was a really
it started
cool...
as a fan game, so you don't want to be too harsh on it.
Exactly. It's a cool fan game, and I played it, and I was like, okay. I think probably my opinion on that game is unfortunately marred in the context of when it came out, or marred by the context of when it came out, because that was right in the middle of that horrible time to be a Mega Man fan, where everything was being canceled, and basically
and then
Capcom.
This is what you get.
And then you get a fan game that Capcom essentially said, okay, we'll put our seal of approval on it, but we're not making a game ourselves. So no, Street Fighter Cross Mega Man it's fine, but it's hard for me to look upon it particularly fondly just because of how bad a time that was to be a Mega Man fan. But hey, it's way better than X7, that's for sure. Way better than X7.
Nice.
Yeah. I will say this. There is one game I hate more than Mega Man X7, and that is the Third Birthday. But we're not here to talk about Parasite Eve. So at least X7 isn't the worst.
Bottom of the barrel.
It's not it's close, but it's not the very bottom of the barrel.
I will see your Third Birthday and raise you one Little Town Hero.
Ooh, fair enough. I know you hate that game. Yeah.
That game makes me want to hurt things. Anyway, all right, we could be here all day talking about Mega Man's many foibles. But Derek, what is your choice for your least favorite game and your favorite franchise?
It's so hard to narrow down like favorite franchise, because I could list off like 5 or 6 easily and be like have them so easy. But I'm like, what do I associate with? What has become a favorite franchise over time that just I kind of think of nowadays? And honestly, it has become Castlevania. And if anybody's seen anything of me with Castlevania, they know exactly which games I'm going to talk about.
Oh boy.
Because, when you hear Castlevania, you hear Castlevania 64. Oh, that's terrible. Mm-hmm. Or, oh God, Castlevania 2. That's a bad game. No, no, those games are like Ash, not great, but you can see where they're coming from. You see what they're going for. You see what kind of makes them fun. Heck, I'd put Castlevania 2 up there as a pretty good game. It just requires a guide, but you have a guide, you know what you're doing. Bam, that's a good game. There is no reconciliation for Castlevania the Adventure. Mm-hmm. The original Game Boy game, and I don't even know if you're familiar with this one, Steve. Because
I'm not. I'm Googling.
Oh, look up gameplay, because
it's so slow.
It is
so
molasses slow. Just imagine the Belmont strut slowed down to about a quarter of the speed.
It's really bad.
Achingly slow, going across the screen in ugly graphics, and the worst part of it is there's only 4 levels in this game. I could not beat it without save states, because here's the gimmick of they decided to go with. If you get hit, you can get your whip upgrades, and that'll make you stronger. It even has a cool new feature where when you get max upgrade, you can send out a little ball of fire. That's cool. That's fun. Except every time you take a hit, your whip degrades.
Oh my god.
It's like Cave Story, I guess, a little bit.
A little bit. So the problem is there's no, like Cave Story, you have a little bit of a buffer. You can work to get it back up. Those upgrades are not common. And the, they're uncommon, and you'll just end up, it's hard to dodge things because you're so slow. Enemies are fast, and there's death traps. It's the usual Castlevania fare that you can kind of worry about. So you're fighting through most of that game with the base whip. Now, despite this, I was able to make it to the 3rd level, and that's the one you should look up, Steve, if you want to see true pain, because the way that 3rd level works is it is a constant run from spikes. When you start, you're going to the right with spikes coming down, and you got to get to safe areas as enemies fight you coming from the side. Okay, make it through there. It takes a little bit, but you get through there. Then you have a vertical section where spikes come up from the ground, and you have to fight enemies and climb the ropes as you're trying to get higher in order to take on whatever's coming up. You finally get to the top of that. Granted, there are very few checkpoints, only in between the spikes, but you get 3 lives. You lose those 3 lives, you have infinite continues, but you're back to the beginning of the level. Oof. And that's without save points. Save states. You get to the top of that spike section. You're going back to the left with spikes coming to you from the right. And you have those little like S sections where you got to go this way, back this way, and then back that way.
No.
Yeah. And you're too slow, and that will hit you. And you're all exactly. And all the while dodging enemies and trying to get through that. I spent hours trying to get through that, or at least it felt like that. I was losing my mind. I had to use save states on the 3DS, the 3DS.
Oh my god!
Basically, the 3DS version of it, in order to even make it to the boss, which was still a pain. And that's not even the final level.
I cannot take my eyes off of this section. It is giving me anxiety to watch.
I got to the point where I can get to the 3rd section relatively consistently. But I would still die quite a bit getting up to that point because the controls are not great. They're a little slippery. They're not, you feel so stiff and unresponsive. You have to get your pixel perfect jumps. It is just a nightmare to get through. And granted, this was one of the very first games on the Game Boy. So it does have that excuse. And to be fair, the second Castlevania game on the system is freaking great. It's like heavily improved. Even has a bit of Mega Man in it because you can choose your level at the start. But that first one, I did not expect it. I did not expect it to hate that game that much. I was like, okay, let's see what we're getting in for with Castlevania 64. Let's see what's going to happen with Castlevania 2. Breeze through them. There's annoying bits, but nothing that drove me insane. No game has driven me more insane than Castlevania the Adventure, and it is definitely in the upper echelon of like least favorite games. Like, I have multiple favorite games, but if I had to pick out the worst game from some of those favorite games, they are all better than Castlevania Adventure. No matter like the worst of Kingdom Hearts, the worst of Mario, the worst of Zelda, the worst of Sonic, Ratchet and Clank, whatever. They're all better than Castlevania the Adventure. It is one of the worst games I've ever played in my life.
To be fair, I had watched a little bit of this before when you talked about it, but I'm rewatching it now, and even the scrolling is jerky. It's not even like even the side scrolling.
Nothing smooth about it.
Smooth, and I feel like, you know what? Maybe I would rather play Mega Man X7 than this. Possibly, I don't know.
Yeah,
I've not played X7.
Bad, but this is terrible.
X7 comes across as beatable, and at least you can power through. I'm pretty sure I could beat X7. I would be here for a while trying to beat Castlevania the Adventure without save states and getting through all it has to offer. And they lull into a false sense of security. Like the first level, it's like, all right, it's not too bad. We got the special. We're maintaining pretty well. I could not keep a hold of the upgraded whip to save my life.
I don't know how anybody could. I'm just watching this and I'm like, you have to know this game intimately to know what's coming. Like there's no reacting to this with how slow the character is. Like if you're watching this and like me, you have never seen this game, like do what Derek told you to and pull it up, because I am shocked at how this game is like underwater the entire thing.
It is. It basically feels like it.
I should be clear. Your character is like he's underwater. The enemies are fine.
Everybody else is fine.
It's like he's covered in molasses, or just like it's so slow.
And here's the worst part. We have Castlevania the Adventure Rebirth, which was released on the Wii. That is gone now, and that game takes little to nothing from the original Adventure, but that's a good thing. It is way, way better. And of course, that's completely unavailable to play, while this is still widely available to play. Well, as long as you get yourself a cartridge or download it before the 3DS eShop disappears. But still, it is more available than the much, much better remake. That is a crime.
That is.
Yeah.
So I feel weird because you guys definitely picked like objectively bad games. And my game is not, I wouldn't call it objectively bad, but I will say that my pick is probably a lot more controversial.
Okay.
That sounds like you.
I came up, right? I'm a provocateur. I came up with this idea for a discussion based solely on how I feel about this specific game. So for those of you that are wondering, my favorite series is, as is probably evident, The Legend of Zelda.
Here we go.
Mm-hmm.
My least favorite game in that series is Twilight Princess. Twilight Princess is a bad game.
Okay. That hit less badly than I expected.
You were
it to.
expecting Wind Waker,
gonna...
which I could never do. I couldn't.
No, I wasn't. I don't know what I was expecting. It wasn't Wind Waker. I don't know exactly what I was, but it wasn't Twilight Princess either. And
you're not gonna make us mad, at least not as mad. I still disagree. Phantom Hourglass is the worst.
Hourglass.
I think Phantom Hourglass easily is the worst.
So
not including the CDI games.
I'm gonna here's where I'm gonna make more people mad.
This doesn't include the CDI games. Those aren't.
That's right, you can't. That's like a mulligan or a gimme or something like. Right, if you call out the CDI games, you're just taking the coward's way out. But first off, I'm gonna say this: what pushes Twilight Princess over the top beyond Phantom Hourglass for me is that Twilight Princess turns my stomach to look at. It is the ugliest Zelda world in the history of Zelda world. Like I feel. Like they just invited the Monopoly man into R&D1 and they were like, how should we make a game that Americans like? He's like, do that Bloom thing that everyone likes. You guys should play a lot of Gears of War and design Zelda to look like that. Because Twilight Princess is just straight up ugly. Like in HD on the Wii, it is an ugly, ugly, ugly game. Like it is brown and gray and the sky is like retina searing because of all the bloom that they put in. And it's just devoid of things. Like there's nothing to do. And for some reason, they thought, and again, like I remember playing Twilight Princess, and even at the time when I was really hyped, when I got my Wii home and I was playing Twilight Princess, I was like, why is Link a dog? Like, why did who needed this? And like the whole game has almost like a kid hanging out of Hot Topic vibe to it. Like it
absolutely does. Yep.
It feels like they just asked like some edgelords what would be really cool, and they're like, "What if Link was like a wolf, bro?" I love wolves. Wolves are cool.
You said it perfectly. I always like to say that like Twilight Princess is like Hot Topic dark, while the Wind Waker is like shockingly really dark, despite the art style and despite what it looks like front facing.
Oh yeah,
Like, and no, it's true.
Like I figure like your Hot Topic starter kit comes with, huge pants, a wallet on a chain, and a copy of Twilight Princess. There's no other way. They're like, this has to be your favorite Zelda. You don't get a choice.
Man, so I agree. I mean, Twilight Princess is probably my least favorite 3D Zelda game. I thought it was Skyward Sword, but after playing Skyward Sword HD, I think it actually probably is Twilight Princess. But I can't agree that it's a bad game. Like, some of those dungeons are really good, and I will say this: the one thing Twilight Princess does really well, I think, it has one of the best companion characters Link has ever had. Midna is awesome. She's
Midna's
awesome.
great. Absolutely.
But she's probably the best part of the game, aside from a few of the dungeons, which I think are genuinely good. But yeah, it's hard to disagree with a lot of. Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think it's ugly. I also think it has one of the less memorable soundtracks in the series, outside of a few key themes like Midna's Lament, for example. But it also has those uku, uko, akakuku, however the hell you say it, those creepy ass sky people things that haunt my nightmares, man. Yeah, I hate those things.
That design's not great.
I think they're cuckoos or something. But
no, they're not cuckoos. There's cuckoo or
they're like a take on it.
Yeah,
they're chicken people.
Horrifying.
So I have issues with Twilight Princess. It's not in my top 5 whatsoever for Zelda games, but there are elements of this game that, as Ash mentioned, that I do really enjoy. Like, the dungeon design's great, Midna's great. There are some really cool story elements that get brought up, and Ganondorf seems kind of badass, and like there's elements there where it just seems greater than it turns out to be, where it has the promise of something big and grand, and sometimes it fulfills those, other times not so much. But the funny thing is, for as much crap as what we tend to give Twilight Princess, and I have not had a chance to go back and play it in a very long time, so that's why I don't want to go too decisive on this. I kind of hoping for it to come to Switch so I can play that, because I missed them out. I was too busy to try it on Wii U. This game saved the Zelda franchise. I saw in an interview.
Oh, yeah.
Like, Wind Waker, like the lack of appeal in Wind Waker was, kind of damning for the series. And so Nintendo realized that they had a much bigger audience for Zelda in the West than in Japan. So they're like, okay, what do Americans want? Twilight Princess is specifically designed around what Americans want and how they wanted it to be, which is why Link comes across as more badass, why he has the chainmail, why the world is basically Ocarina of Time, and then trying to get in their own little changes there. And yeah, without Twilight Princess, the franchise might have been dead in the same way that Fire Emblem almost died. And it's kind of funny to think about that, but
yeah,
I mean, it doesn't make it a great game or anything like that, but it is. I do consider it one of the weaker entries.
Yeah, no, I definitely will give it what it's due for what it did for the franchise, because it sold extremely well, which in a weird way makes me hate it more, just because they were like, oh, look at this, you stupid Americans, we'll put in bloom and make it ugly and brown, and you guys will all buy it, and we did. It
was the fad of the time. I mean,
yeah. You know what? I'll admit it. I'll admit it. I was there for the initial reveal at Nintendo's press conference that year. I mean, I was in that audience, and that was a hype-ass reveal. It was my first ever E3 conference. So that was to have that be your first ever conference was really cool. And, the reveal at the time was incredibly exciting. But it's just funny how history has looked back upon these games. Like, Steve, I don't think your, and by extrapolation, our opinion on Twilight Princess is all that uncommon these days. People look back on Twilight Princess, and it definitely has its fans, don't get me wrong, but I feel like time has been much kinder to the Wind Waker, where people look back on that and they're like, wow, we didn't see how good we had it back then. Wind Waker is awesome. Whereas Twilight Princess had that really great reception out of the gate, but looking back on it, it hasn't aged quite as well for some people, not everybody. But it's interesting how that's happened. But yeah, it's certainly not anywhere close to my least favorite game in the series, but it's probably my least favorite 3D Zelda. Yeah.
I also love how Nintendo tried to make us think that Zant was really going to be the main villain. I mean,
that pissed me off.
Spoiler alert, Ganon's in this one.
Right? And they built up Zant really well up until his face reveal, where it's just like, oh, hey, he's insane.
Yeah.
I was so upset because up to that point, they had made Zant seem like a genuinely creepy, almost like Silent Hill-esque designed villain, really creepy stuff. And then you get to the fight with him, and he's just like this wacky comic reliefy, silly villain. And I'm like, what? Why would you do that? Like, especially after that one cutscene in the middle of the game with like the creepy Ilya and Link with no irises and like the white eyes, and they did some genuinely cool, scary stuff in this game, but they just completely undermined it with the Zant reveal at the end, where he's just kind of goofy and silly. That was so disappointing.
Ganondorf does have some great moments, like the flashback to him being sealed away. Great cutscene. The way he just showing his power, how he kills one of the sages. In a pretty brutal way, and even the final boss fight against him, pretty great. I like the fact that he, the steps he goes and what you have to kind of do over the time. It felt appropriately epic, which Zant did not. But this is the game that kind of explains the hijacked by Ganon trope of Zelda.
Right.
Yeah.
And one more knock that Twilight Princess has going against it, which, to be fair, isn't really Twilight Princess's fault, is the fact that it isn't even the best Zelda game in which you play as a wolf that came out that year. Okami came out into 2006 as well, and it's essentially that template. It is the pre-Breath of the Wild design template of 3D Zelda, taken to its absolute pinnacle, in my opinion. But playing as Amaterasu in Okami just feels so much better. Her weight, the way she moves around, the way she attacks, the celestial brush, you really feel as though you're playing as a wolf in that game, versus in Twilight Princess, you just kind of feel like you're playing as, if this makes sense, the character model of a wolf, right? It doesn't feel meaningfully different, in my opinion, from just playing as regular Link.
Yeah.
That's
I agree definitely fair.
I have to say, too, I could be misremembering, but isn't Twilight Princess the first game in the series that had the Tears of Light, which then ended up spilling over into Skyward Sword, kind of?
Yes.
And
they were called something different, but yeah, they were.
But the thing is, I know how it is when you have a favorite Zelda and everybody else does not like it, because I defended Skyward Sword for a very long time.
Same.
But some Zelda games just click with you, and unlike Ash and I's pick, this is not a bad game in the slightest. It's just less good in comparison to other Zelda games.
And
that said, I have heard really good things about the Twilight Princess manga that you might enjoy.
I have too.
I need to read that.
Steve.
Yeah,
I think it just finished up, and I heard it's pretty freaking great.
I feel like the biggest thing against Twilight Princess, the game, is that Nintendo took their usual approach of letting the gameplay, supersede the narrative. And because again, there's like a loose story in Twilight Princess, like, hey, this happens, you got to go rescue Zelda. Eventually Ganon shows up. You got to whoop his ass on a horse at some point. Horse-based combat, by the way, was like one of the big things they pushed for that game. And it was awful. Like, it was not good. Like, even a little bit. Like, I remember them making a big deal. In fact, in the reveal trailer, even, you had like the epic music, like rising up, and then Link draws his sword on the horse, and everyone at E3, including Ash, probably screams.
Oh yeah,
they're like, "Oh my god, he's fighting on a horse!" And then you're playing it, and you're like, "This is so ridiculously hard to do." I'm swinging this Wii remote like I'm gonna give myself a tennis elbow, and I haven't killed anything. But
it also commits the cardinal Zelda sin that Skyward Sword does as well, of having an interminably long opening.
Yes.
Like, that is the longest, just slowest, dullest opening. Actually, my wife wanted to play a Zelda game, and she's like, "Oh, I've heard about Twilight Princess." She liked the Wind Waker a lot, and she wanted to play a new one, and she loved Ocarina. She hasn't played Majora's Mask, but I was like, well, this was around when Twilight Princess HD came out, and I said, well, do you want to try Twilight Princess? And she was like, okay, sure. And she was like, when does the game start? Like, she ended up dropping it right when you get to the Twilight Hyrule Castle at the end of the intro. I'm like, just keep going, you're almost there. And she's like, I can't. It takes too long to get going. And I mean, I can't blame her. I couldn't blame her.
Well, you got to catch like a goat thing and corral some animals and find a baby floating down a river, right?
And sumo.
Yeah.
Right. as Moon, Rhoda, and Pandotter forgot to land in our live audience chat saying, "Goat in." Yeah, you're herding goats that's not what I want to do when I start a Zelda. I don't want to start a Zelda game and herd goats. I want to go on an adventure, man.
Yeah, you gotta get dollar store bombers some gear so that they can be hooligans somewhere. Yeah. Like it definitely has a really, really bad, like, slow introduction. And I think if you're not the type of person who's hyped for a new Zelda game, it's not going to carry you through in most cases.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, other than that, like, I agree with both of you guys, though, and I want to take the bad vibes back to a place of positivity, because while I feel that Twilight Princess is the worst Zelda game, and you're never going to change my mind unless, they really mess up Breath of the Wild 2. They won't. I'm just putting that on the universe, knocking on wood, they won't. Yeah. But it's still a very good game. And I've said this many, many hundreds of times here on YouTube. A bad Zelda game is still a really good game. So
yeah,
I want to, gotcha, fooled you.
That is true.
My least favorite game is still great.
That is true, but I don't know if I could say the same about Phantom Hourglass, which is my pick for the worst Zelda game. I don't know if I could say that it's still better than a lot of other games. Phantom Hourglass just kind of sucks in my opinion, but I don't know. Maybe it's better than a lot of other games.
Clunky controls, repeating dungeon.
Yeah.
Not as interesting ocean world.
Yeah.
I think it didn't disappoint me as much because of the fact that I never viewed it the same way I view, like, a mainline Zelda game.
That, I think, yeah.
That's fair.
And that
That's
for me
fair.
is like, when they announce, like, a GBA or a DS game, I'm like, cool, neat, I will get that. But I'm not like, holy crap, I'm, going on media blackout until I play this. Whereas with a console game, there's much higher expectations. And so when I played Twilight Princess, I was like, oh, that was it? I took time off work for this.
Well, that kind of goes back to what you were saying before about, like, like Mega Man Soccer sucked, but the expectations weren't there compared to, like, a mainline sequel like X7, so it hurts more, right?
Right, exactly. So that's my key takeaway here. But I think that's about it. This is a short one because you can only have one least favorite game.
It's true.
Yeah. I mean, ostensibly should be a lot of favorites, but I think we'll just get into the weeds a little bit if we go into all of our least favorite of favorite games.
Yeah, like I said, we could talk about Phantasy Star 3. I've got like a paragraph. Right? I was just kidding.
Oh god.
But see, if we did that, Steve, then either Derek or I would have to go into Kingdom Hearts, and then would be talking about at least Kingdom
that's
Hearts
a whole other long discussion.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. We both purposely avoided that, I believe.
Need like a case of water to start that discussion. All right. Well, anyway, folks, that's going to do it for us. Thank you guys so much for listening in to our weekly discussion. Reminder that if you'd like to vote on what our next weekly discussion would be, head over to patreon.com/gvgaming, where as a producer or above, you can vote on topics each and every week for what we will discuss. That's about it for us. We all covered our least favorite games. I don't have anything else to say. I'm just padding out the outro here at this point. So thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure to subscribe to GVG for more weekly discussions just like this one. Whether you subscribe, watch our videos, sub to us on Patreon, we love you and we appreciate all your support. We'll catch you guys next time. We'll be back Friday for GVG Cast at 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern. And until then, guys, bye.
Bye.